All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anthony Volin. I'm the owner and broker of the Collective Realty. Thank you for joining us. This is our multifamily meetup session where we work with people who are investing or want to invest in multifamily specifically. If you'd like to sign up for our group online, it's lamultifamilymeetup.com. I'm so happy to have you here today. I'm joined with Will Tiao, our commercial division director, and Heath Goldman, financial architect, and we have a great session for you. So I'd like to just start by, here we are, just post-election by 1 week. It's only been a week. And we did have 3 propositions that were on the ballot that definitely will and could affect real estate. So the first one that just wanted to bring up was Proposition 15. We got great news on that today. That has been called and it has been voted down. So that, again, as a reminder, Prop 15 was a proposition that would reassess commercial property owners, their property tax basis to today's rate. That would also affect multifamily owners who own properties that are worth $3 million or over. So this is really, really good news for everybody that was not put through. I think it was about a 52% margin, and California's still not done counting. We're about 90% done, but yeah, that one is voted down no, 51.8% no. The next one that I was really excited about was California Association of Realtors put this on the ballot, and this was the property tax portability issue for seniors, fire victims, and disabled. So this one has not been called yet. So far, it's leaning in our favor, in my favor, 51.1% yes. If this does pass and you're 55 and over, you will be able to bring your property tax basis from your current property to your next property anywhere in California. Before, you could do this with Prop 1690 to only 10 counties in California, and your purchase price of your next home had to be less than what you sold your current home for. Now you can go to any county in California. You're able to transfer it 3 times rather than just once. And you can also purchase a home more expensive than the home you're living in. So this is going to be great. If you actually buy a home, that's priced a little bit more than what you're living in now, you'll pay the new property tax base for the portion that's above what you sold for. So it's a blended property tax, but you're able to maintain your property tax basis for whatever you sold for and bring that onto your next home. This came up, with me in my business a couple times in the last year, where I had people who wanted to move closer to their family, and they were going to actually buy a home pretty, close to the same price. It was maybe a little bit more expensive. They were ruled out. They weren't able to move and take their property tax base over. And because of that, they weren't able to afford to move and to purchase their new home because of the amount of property taxes that they would be paying. That was just enough to put them over the edge to allow them not to move. So now with this hopefully going to pass, it's close, so we're going to keep an eye on it. If that does, help us spread the word. If you're 55 and over, you are able to bring your property tax base to your next home 3 times. If you're a fire victim, you also are able to do this. And if you're severely disabled, you're able to do this as well. So we'll keep you guys updated on that, but it's looking good. And then, of course, Prop 21 was, I think, the #1 proposition that everyone who's concerned with multifamily was really paying close attention to. And this was the ballot initiative that was put on by Michael Weinstein, who put on Prop 10 last year. That was defeated. And this was an even stricter version of that. This time it would get rid of vacancy decontrol completely. It would even put rent control onto single family homes and condos in certain cases. And that race has been called. That was one of the early ones that has been called. That 59.7% voted no. So there was a 20 point gap in that. I mean, that's pretty much what happened last year as well. And then we know Newsom and the state put on a statewide rent control. So we didn't need this to pass to make it worse and more strict. We do have a really great video on our YouTube channel from an attorney who gave us an overview of what the statewide rent control initiative really means for us. So if you want to learn more about that, I would encourage you to go to our YouTube channel at the Collective Realty, subscribe to it, and find that video and watch. But we're very grateful that so far the 3 initiatives that were affecting real estate are going in our favor. Will, do you have any other comments or anything to add to that?
No, I think obviously we, all of us who are in the multifamily industry, breathed a huge sigh of relief when that Proposition 21 went down. That said, I think we have to basically, legislatively speaking, obviously, it's a very difficult environment for us. I don't think there's any doubt about that with the eviction moratoriums and as you mentioned, the state right rent control rule. It's just that's one of the things we're always discussing at these seminars. We always bring on experts, always bring on lawyers who speak about these things. So it's just very important if you own multifamily to be up to date on these regulations because they're ever changing.
Yeah. Through the session today, if anyone has any questions or comments, you can raise your hand and we will call on you. You can unmute yourself and speak. Your cameras aren't on, but we can still hear you. Or there's a chat function at the bottom. Feel free to use that, or actually the Q&A section at the bottom would be even better if you have a question for our panelists. Put it there and we'll make sure we look at that closely and get all of those questions answered for you. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Will, the commercial director of the collective. He also has his own property management company, TIA Properties, is an investor himself, and is just somebody who I look up to and look for advice on when I'm talking anything multifamily. So Will, take it over.
Thank you, Anthony. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, it's been, quite a week, right? Since last week. We've learned a lot about, real estate and the future. So I would say the number one question I get on the multifamily front is, how are collections going? Like everybody wants to know right now what it looks like out there. So I would say for Los Angeles and, generally speaking, like what I see depends on neighborhood and on class of asset. So, for example, during the entire pandemic, I would say at the bottom, our collection rate went down to about 90 to 92%. That was the lowest it got. Now, just to give you an example, like retail, right? If you owned retail, the collections have gone down in the 50 to 60% range is what I'm hearing. And if you owned office space, could be in the 60 to 70% range. Industrial has pretty much stayed the same, but multifamily has held pretty steady, at least in Southern California in terms of collection from 90 to 92%. I would say since September, which is when the state passed a new law regarding rent collections, that has gone up to about 95, 96%. I think these numbers tend to surprise a lot of people because I think a lot of people expect that the collections would be lower given that there's so much unemployment out there. And there definitely is that. However, I think I've always experienced that even when there's a downturn, if people can afford two things, they pay two things, food and rent, if they can afford it. So those are the things that we are finding in our, now that said, it also depends on what type of asset, like what type of class. For example, Class A buildings, and I would classify Class A as kind of luxury type buildings. You see those in downtown. You see them in Mid-Wilshire, in certain areas. Maybe you're getting a one bedroom for $25,000 to $3,000. Those guys are sitting, right? If you're paying high rents, a lot of those are sitting and being vacant. We had a one bedroom in downtown in a luxury loft. First, we put it on the market, no hits. We put it 1 month free, no hits. 2 months free, couple hits. 3 months free, we finally got it rented. So that's a quarter of your income, right? 3 months. B-class properties, we're seeing, maybe 2 weeks to a month concession for those, and definitely seeing some lower rents. C-class, interestingly enough, we've seen very little change, and maybe that's because those have been the most affordable units. So that's been very interesting for a lot of people to see. I'm also starting to see a lot more off-market activity. You know, people ask me where we get off-market activity, like where do we find these off-market deals? Obviously, for us, we're just in it every day. So a lot of people know, you know, we have clients who are looking. We also, because we have a management side, you know, some of my owners are looking to sell, you know, but may not want to put on the market. We also get clients who are looking for management who may be also interested in selling. So we tend to see a lot more activity on those fronts. But one of the areas where I think is really critical, and this is kind of a segue into our speaker today, is capital gains. I'll give you an example. I just got a call like a few days ago for a fourplex in Frogtown. The family had bought this property in 1962, which means they bought it for nothing, right? And the property is now worth 7 figures, right? And I don't think they would think about selling because they're worried about the capital gains. But our speaker today, Heath Goldman, that's going to be his topic, specifically about how to sell a real estate asset without having to deal with the capital gains. So Heath is the head of Icon Wealth and Legacy Partners. He's a financial advisor, a very trusted one, deals with a lot of high net worth individuals. And we're really excited to have him speak today. So Heath, take it away. I would say one thing, as Anthony said, if you do have questions, please put in the Q&A tab. At the end of Heath's presentation, we'll go over those questions, and we look forward to hearing what he has to say. Go ahead.
Will, Anthony, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have done this presentation all over the country. I have never done it on Zoom. I am used to seeing people in the audience. I'm used to being interrupted and having conversations. For those of you who know me, I do have bad ADD, so let's just keep the interruptions coming. If you've got questions along the way, put them in the chat line, interrupt me, I'm okay with that. I'm happy to answer them, and if we have to table them until the end, we can do that as well. So Icon Wealth and Legacy Partners is my company. I've had the company for about 16 years. I brand myself as a financial architect, but what does that really mean? I work with business owners and a lot of real estate families in the areas of estate planning, succession, wealth transfer, tax mitigation, and asset protection. So any of those questions along the way after the presentation, happy to answer them as well. And once again, happy to be here. So the title is How to Convert Your Clients' Highly Appreciated Assets to Cash Without Any Tax. And usually I have a little tagline there and it says legally. This has been in the code section since 1969. This is not something that you are going to get in trouble with the IRS. I do not want to see my face nor my clients' faces on the front of the Wall Street Journal. So rest assured, 1969 in the code section, and happy to answer any questions about that as well. So we're going to start with a little quiz. Let's take one copper penny. I know they're not entirely copper anymore, but let's just take one copper penny. And if you doubled that penny every 30 days, how much money would you have after 30 days? One penny doubled. So tomorrow we have 2. The next day we have 4. So usually I've got people raising their hands and yelling at me and everything else. Can we get some people to take some wild guesses here? One penny doubled every day for 30 days, 1 month. That's it. How many pennies, how much money do we have at the end of 30 days? Will and Anthony, at least you guys have.
Well, I just finished reading Darren Hardy's Compound Effect, and he started his book out with this, so I know exactly what the answer is. So I won't ruin it. And his thing was, if I could give you $2 million in 30 days, or give you a penny and let it double for 30 days, what would you take? And he said, usually people will say the $2 million. Of
course. Will, you want to take a stab at it?
I mean, you know, I was going to make a joke about being Asian and math, but I'm not really that good about it. Wow.
I was floored. My partner and I saw this presentation. We grabbed the calculator as soon as we're done, grabbed a couple coffees and sat down and figured this thing out. It was accurate. My wife didn't believe it either recently when I was redoing the presentation on a couple of slides that needed some editing. She went ahead and pulled the Excel spreadsheet out and she looked at me and she's like, we're gonna start doubling pennies in this house. So let's change the question just a little bit. If you had a penny and you doubled it every day, but each day that you doubled it, you were assessed a 20% tax, which is something similar to capital gains, what would you have after 30 days? Now, we know that we have 10,737,000 if we double it every day but after 30 days. But if we are assessed a 20% tax on each day, what would you have at the end of 30 days? Anthony, did that question get asked in the lecture too?
No, that did not.
Okay, so now you and Will are going to have to guess for the rest of them. So it's not 10.8 million. We know that because we're being assessed a 20% tax on each day. What's the answer?
6 million. I don't know.
I don't know. 4 million? Oh my gosh.
This is the major effect of taxation. I didn't believe this either, so I had to go back and check the calculator and use the Excel spreadsheet, and these numbers are exceptionally accurate. Okay, what we are going to talk about today is something I call a tax-exempt trust. Some people will call it a charitable remainder trust. If you have sat through a presentation on a charitable remainder trust, just forget about it for a moment. I think I'm going to educate you on some other ideas that you may walk out of here and going, you know what? I heard that charitable remainder trust idea a long time ago. It didn't make sense for me, but the way Heath just explained it may very well be. Wealth preservation trust is also another term that we use. Now, I want to mention one thing. Will said that we are looking at 1031 alternatives. If you have the ability and the time and the resources to do a 1031, forget about everything you're going to learn about today. What I am talking about is what happens when you get to a point where you're going to sell an asset. This is not just real estate. It could be an LLC. It could be a C Corp. It could be stocks. It could be bonds. But today, obviously, we're going to focus on real estate. But the trust itself can utilize any of the other assets. Okay? If you can do a 1031, that is in your family's best interest. Majority of the time, Anthony and Will can help you with those. If you get to a point where taxes become an issue, you have to sell, you want to sell, you can't do a 1031, that's when this alternative strategy may make sense for you. Guys, I'm not going to see the chat line, so if you see the chats, happy to have you interrupt me. Okay, John and Mary Jones, 55 years of age. The asset has appreciated to $2 million. They have depreciated the asset over the 30 years that they have owned the asset down to 0. That is our starting example and the case that we're going to talk through. Now, if you're going to sell this asset and keep the proceeds, yes, some of these numbers are a little high. I have not gone back and changed them every single time I do a presentation, depending on what the tax rates are. So what we're using today is a cumulative 40% capital gains rate. That is a federal rate plus a California rate. We're not too far off from 40%, believe it or not. You sell the $2 million asset, you pay $800,000 in capital gains tax. You can tell the math is $1.2 million left to the family. You're then going to go to your favorite financial advisor and you're going to ask them to manage this money and produce an income stream because you just had an income stream that is no longer because you've sold the asset. Let's just assume you can get a 7% rate, still possible, not likely, but still possible, $84,000 a year for the rest of your life. And based on the age of John and Mary, you're looking at a 30-year life expectancy, $2,520,000 of cumulative income, 84,000 times the 30. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a charitable remainder trust, a tax-exempt trust, so it is exempt from estate taxes as well. If we took this $1,200,000 and we subject to approximately a 40% estate tax, that is where you come up with the $480,000 of estate tax. So at the end of the day, selling the asset and keeping it outright, you've got $2,520,000 of cumulative income. You are left with $720,000. You started with 2, you paid $800,000 in capital gains, you paid another $480,000 of estate taxes. You're left with $720,000 for your family, your heirs. 0 has gone to charity, and the total tax bill is $1,280,000. This is just not a good outcome, which is why most people go to Anthony and Will and say, I want to do a 1031, because this tax number is something that most people do not want to pay. I would ask you normally by a show of hands. Maybe Will and Anthony can see a show of hands on the participant feature. But how many people really want to sell a $2 million asset and net out $720,000 for their heirs and pay $1,280,000 in tax? And the answer is almost rarely none. Okay. As I mentioned before, if you can do a 1031, do it.
How did you get the estate tax number again?
The estate tax would be let me get here. It would be the $1,200,000 at the 40% bracket. I did make an assumption, Anthony, thank you for pointing that out, that these people are what's called a taxable estate. They have other assets. They are not, they are above the estate tax exemption amount. That is currently $11.58 million per person. This is a wealthy family worth more than about $24 million, and this asset was sold. So it's the $1.2 million times the 40% bracket to give you the $480,000 of estate tax. Okay? So, as I mentioned before, we are looking for a 1031 alternative. We do not want to pay this tax. This is going to strangle us. I'm not going to go through every little detail of this, but I will tell you that the asset will be gifted into this CRT, and I will talk about the costs here in a minute and all the other functions of who does what. And as I mentioned before, this is a tax-exempt trust. So we have no capital gain when we sell our apartment building, our $2 million apartment building, inside our tax-exempt trust. What I didn't mention is the mere transfer of our asset, whether it is individually owned, whether it's in an LLC, what doesn't matter, will create an immediate income tax deduction that you can take advantage of on your other income from your other holdings. The reason that you're allowed to, the reason you are allowed to get a refund is because there is a future gift that I'll talk about in a moment that is going to go to charity. So instead of taking the asset, selling it, and paying the government a bunch of tax, your new business partner is going to be your favorite charitable cause, your favorite family foundation, or a combination thereof, or multiple charities. And I always ask people, if I could show you a way to take dollars that would have otherwise gone to the government in the form of taxes and redirect them to your favorite social causes, would you be interested in hearing the concept? Well, Heath, I don't really have any charitable causes that we support, or, okay. Do you think that you would rather utilize charity as your partner versus the US government? And the answer almost always is yes. Now I want to be very clear about something, and I state this right here all the time. I am not anti-government. I am not an anti-American. I love this country, but there are other strategies that will allow you to do with your tax dollars what you want, as opposed to sending them to the IRS in April, August, or September, depending on, April, September, October, depending on when your tax bill is due. Okay, so let's get back here. We got a $2 million apartment building that we sold inside the CRT. We've got $2 million of proceeds left because this is a tax-exempt trust. Your financial advisor is going to love you because you're now bringing them $2 million as opposed to the previous slide where we took in $1.2 million. Kept the same 7% growth rate, income rate. Now we've got $140,000 as opposed to the $84,000 that we had before. So I don't know how that happened. I apologize. Same 30-year income stream. Now we're up to $4.2 million. Now this is starting to look really favorable. Tax-exempt trust, estate tax is 0 on this asset. And I want to talk about something here for a moment. This is really weird to not have anybody except Anthony and Will looking at me. So the one objection we always get when we talk about this strategy is, Heath, if my asset at some point in the future has to go to charity, then I am disinheriting my family. And I'm not intentionally disinheriting my family necessarily, but the asset, the strategy that you're telling us about really disinherits my heirs. And I really love my heirs and I want to leave them something. Well, we've got a much larger income stream with this strategy than we did before selling the asset outright and paying the tax. So in this particular example, we are going to take $400,000 and we are going to buy a life insurance policy that is going to replace the $2 million asset to our children. You are still going to have more income with this strategy than you would selling the asset outright and paying the tax, but the heirs are also going to get something. So let's look at those numbers. $3,878,600. Where do we come up with that number? $4,200,000 less the $400,000 for the life insurance, plus the $78,600 for the tax refund. And if you remember correctly before, and I'll have a side-by-side chart here in a moment, this is a lot more income during your lifetime, and you took care of your kids, children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, whoever it may be. Anthony, Will, Heath, doesn't matter who you leave your assets to. You've got a $2 million asset that is going to be left to the kids, heirs. That was because of the life insurance. We've got $2 million going to charity because at the end of this trust, which is typically designed to last for the lifetime of my clients. If I have older clients who may not have a 30-year life expectancy, we can add on another generation so that the heirs can have income if my older patriarch and matriarchs die prematurely. This zero is in green. The previous zero was in red because the charity wasn't getting anything previously, but now the government is not getting anything. And this is a perfect time when everybody looks at me and says, well, why is the government okay with this? Okay, why is this in the code section since 1969? Why is this legal, Heath? And if you go back to our original tax in this country, tax programs in our country, originally dollars were used, tax dollars were used for schools, infrastructure, so on and so forth. It was to build this country. So what the government says to us is, if you want to take your own tax dollars and redirect them to social causes that are going to develop underprivileged areas, school programs, churches, synagogues, whatever it may be, we are going to give you a tax deduction and allow you to do just that. Okay? That is the reason why the government is okay with this. That is the reason why it's been in the code section since 1969. That is why I always talk about a redirection of tax dollars to your own favorite social causes or family charity. And what I mean by that is a family foundation that is going to support charity. Okay? Any questions so far, gentlemen? And do you guys have a... Can we make some up?
No questions in the chat yet. It's looking good.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions to spur some conversation?
And you just said that the charity could be a family foundation.
The charity can be a private family foundation. The charity can be a public family foundation. The charity can be what's called a donor advised fund, or it can go directly to the charities of your choice. Absolutely will.
So if I wanted to, I could donate to the Trump charity. Oh wait, that one's been closed. But you could basically choose the charity of your choice.
Right. Remember something. Political PACs, political action committees, are not a tax deductible function. So when it comes to politics, it's almost a no game. 501c3s, or those that qualify for 501c3 status. You know, your favorite local boys and girls club, churches, synagogues, animal rescue, whatever it may be.
Yeah, the part that really stood out to me, which when I've dealt with CRTs in the past and I've heard them explained, they weren't suggesting purchasing the life insurance policy to replace that lost amount that you're inheriting. And I think to me, that's kind of like the magic key to find out what that number is. And if that works, and it looks like it does, that this makes more sense than it did to me in the past. So is that something that is more unique to your strategy, or do a lot of people do that and I just didn't hear about it before?
Anthony, this is a wonderful question, and this is definitely one that the audience always asks. Here's the answer. Most of the time when people have heard this presentation, not mine, but heard a CRT, a Charitable Remainder Trust presentation, it is either being put on by the charity or by a representative that is aligned with the charity. Now, I believe in charitable causes, and what do I mean by that? I had a client about 15 years ago. They were in their late 60s, early 70s. I designed a CRT for them that was going to pay them out, not 7%. They were going to get paid out almost 14% from the trust. Now, there are people on this call that are looking at me cross-eyed right now, but let me clarify why I said that and what I mean by the payout. It is not only a payout of the income that's generated inside the trust. It is a combination of income and capital. There is a law that states that the proceed that must go to the charity has to be at least 10% of a future value, and I'll talk about that in a minute, of the original amount. What does that mean in English? The $2 million apartment building went into the trust. By law, to qualify for this tax status, at least 10% of the $2 million, $200,000, must go to charity in the future. So what that really tells us is that we have $1.8 million of capital, plus all of the income that the $2 million generates that gets paid out over our lifetime. So when you look at this strategy, Anthony, most of the time it is being put on by a charity. They want to keep that number around 5%, which is the minimum, 5% of the $2 million, which is only $10,000 a year going out to them as income. And I'm telling you that it can be designed a lot higher than that, and you can provide a lot more income for your clients, leaving less to charity in the future. Okay, as long as you qualify for this 10%, the government is okay with less money going to the charity in the future. You probably saw an advisor give this presentation on behalf of a charity, or somebody that represents the charity giving the presentation, and that's why they don't suggest taking, in my example, another $400,000 out of the trust and paying for the life insurance.
Got it.
Okay, let's look at the side-by-side. This is my favorite slide. This slide does not even talk to you if you are charitably inclined. It talks to you if you do look purely at the math and the economics. Okay. So over here, we've got this CRT, Charitable Remainder Trust. We have this ILIT thing. What is that? That's the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust. That is a separate trust that needs to be created to hold the life insurance policies if you are above the estate tax exemption amount. Give me one sec. I got Will, Heath, and Anthony right on top of the slide. Okay. And then you've got the sale and sell the asset outright and keep the proceeds over here on the right. Okay. Life benefits, 3.88 million compared to 2.52. Okay. As long as that income's coming to me and my family, I'm picking the 3.88 million. 2 million to the children, 720,000 of the children. Once again, if I'm being selfish, I'm picking the 2 million for me and my family. Net to the family, you can see that it's almost 2 to 1 here. 5.88 million, 3.24 million. Okay. But we are doing something good for charity and still benefiting our family. $2 million going to charity. Over here, we got nothing going to charity. Net benefits is more than 2 to 1. And the total cost of tax in this situation, this strategy, was 0 versus 1.28 million over here. Okay. I don't care if you are charitably inclined or not. I tell people when 1031 is not an alternative that you have to look at the CRT strategy. I did not say you have to use the CRT strategy. There are times when it does not make sense, okay? But you at least owe it to yourself to at least know that the strategy exists and that it is an option for you and your family if a 1031 with Anthony and Will does not work.
Heath, there is a question from Molly. Then are tax exempt trusts only necessary when the assets exceed the allowable estate exemption?
So the answer is no. I don't believe that it is. I had to think about that for a minute. It keeps moving on me, sorry. So the answer is no. You do not have to be over the estate tax exemption to utilize it, because at the end of the day, you are still subject to a capital gains tax plus recapture depreciation plus the Obama surtax that gets you close to 40% anyways. This particular example, to make it really tight, I just utilize a above an exemption amount because on the 2 million, most people would say that it's not subject to the estate tax. And that would be accurate if you're not subject to the estate tax. So just to make the example clean, we went ahead and just subjected these people to an estate tax. But if not, you're still going to have the capital gains tax that you're trying to avoid on the 1031 asset, or on the asset that you can't do the 1031 on. Molly, if that doesn't make sense, then ask something further. But I think that should answer the question. And the reason that we talk about this strategy and we talk about this with people is going back to these questions. We do not want to subject our assets that we've worked our lifetimes for to tax. 10.8 million, when we start paying tax, we drop down to $455,000. This is the reason why this strategy is made available to people like yourselves.
She said, thank you for the clarification.
Perfect. I want to talk about costs here for a moment in case we have any other questions. I just know the questions that typically get asked when I do this presentation in person. And as I've mentioned, I've done it all over the country, and everybody's got their own tax rates and everything else. But for the most part, the CRT would cost you about $2,500. It's a one-time cost to get the document drafted. If you did want to use the life insurance, as Anthony suggested before, that's about another $2,500. If you're using the same attorney, maybe it's a little bit cheaper, but let's just round the numbers to $5,000. One-time costs. And if you go ahead and use the strategy, you need a individual tax return. So maybe it costs you $1,500. That is an ongoing charge for the life of the trust. Much cheaper, $1,500, than paying the capital gains and not having the money possible to reinvest with your favorite financial advisor to produce the income that your family needs to live off of.
When you say the $2,500 for the life insurance, that's for the life insurance trust that you just mentioned?
That is the life insurance trust. If you go back here on this particular example, we went ahead and did a one-time pay of $400,000 for the $2 million asset of life insurance that the family is going to receive once the patriarch and matriarch pass.
And so the $400,000 goes towards paying the premiums of that $2 million policy, or whatever, however large the policy.
It's a one pay. We're not paying them ongoing, just to make it easy for the presentation purposes. It's a one pay. We wrote a check for $400,000 to the insurance company, and we were done. We got $2 million guaranteed at the death of the last of the patriarch or matriarch.
Got it.
My fee generally depends on if you're hiring me to do the entire financial planning process with your family, estate planning, asset protection, wealth transfer, succession, everything else, versus just designing this. And if it's not a complicated sale, as a favor to Will and Anthony for inviting me, I would go ahead and be able to generate that, excuse me, that design pretty quickly and free of charge for your attended members today. you know, those are really the questions that we normally get. Cost, obviously, you know, why does the government allow this? Is this really legal? That's really the questions that we typically get. And then the life insurance for the unintentional disinheritance of the children. One thing I want to mention before, I mentioned it earlier, but I want to mention it again. If you are an older client, that 7% is going to be a higher rate that is allowed when we design the trust. And then there is a ability to continue the trust for certain period of time, typically 20 years past patriarch and matriarch's life, if they do want their heirs to get the income from the trust before it terminates to the charity of their choice.
So Heath, talk me through like the example that I gave at the beginning. I have a potential client. They're looking to, like I said, they have an asset, fourplex, Frogtown, probably worth about $1 million. They would have to pay, you know, as you said, maybe 40% capital gains tax. So walk me through how you would talk to this potential client, like how you would set everything up.
Perfect. I also want to mention one thing before I answer the question. Debt is an issue on these assets. Most clients who are going to do the strategy have other assets that they can refinance and pull the debt off of one and add debt to the other one. So it's not usually an issue when we finally get to the strategy part, but debt on your asset is an issue that we have to deal with. So the answer specifically though was, well, we are going to take this $1 million fourplex. We are going to put it inside the trust. We are going to design the trust to last typically for the client's lifetime. And based on how long they are anticipated to live, that will give you this percentage payout. The minimum is 5%. The maximum is 50. And you just can't arbitrarily pick between the 5 and the 50. You have to create the formula, because I have to qualify the formula to at least have that 10%, as I mentioned before, remaining at the termination of the trust. So that formulaic process will give us this percentage payout that would be attributed to your client, Will. So once the asset is in the trust, that would create this income tax deduction, if you remember correctly. This tax refund, this income tax deduction, just for the mere transfer of the asset into the trust. At that particular point, you would sell the client's asset since you are the broker. And now the client would have $1 million of assets as opposed to having approximately $600,000 of assets outside of the trust if they didn't use this strategy. They go to their favorite financial advisor and they said, I've got $1 million. The trust is supposed to generate call it 7% income stream. But if you can't generate the 7%, that's okay. We'll pull out some of the principal. Because remember one thing, while I am not opposed to charity, I very much am a charitable individual, we still are trying to produce and create income for these clients during their lifetime. So if we pull a little bit of the principal out to meet the income stream necessary for the family, that's okay. The charity just gets a little less in the future. And then, depending on the age of your client and the income stream that needs to be generated, we will know how long that trust is going to last, and we will know reasonably how much the charity is going to get. And if there is a desire to use the wealth replacement trust inside the ILIT for the heirs, we will know how much of that income stream needs to generate, be used, for the life insurance for the replacement of the asset to the children. That makes sense?
Yeah. So at what point do they need to engage you? Like at what point, like obviously before the sale of the asset, right? I mean, I would imagine.
Well, it's even before that, Will. You cannot have a letter of intent on this asset and still go ahead and use the strategy. So it really should be, if you're looking at a possible sale and you can't guarantee yourself that a 1031 is going to be available to you, then we should just start looking at rough round numbers and roughly what the strategy looks like, and know that attorneys, estate planning attorneys, and the types of client attorneys that draft this document are busy at the end of the year because people are gifting and doing all kinds of year-end planning. We have to take that into consideration. I can occasionally call in a favor from the attorney, but it also depends on timing. But the asset needs to be in the trust, arguably about 30 days before it is listed. I know that that's not always possible, and don't hold yourself to that rule, but that's what the government would like to see you have. But they also know that if you truly do have charitable intent, that the assets are going to go to charity in the future, that is something that we can deal with the IRS. It's usually not an issue.
And you mentioned that if you have debt on the asset, that could be an issue. So going back to this original example, the $2 million asset, say you had still like $500,000 in debt. So what's the issue and what's the workaround if there is one?
Great question. So my client in particular, when we did this strategy a while ago, had debt on their asset. But they had another asset that had very low debt, very little debt. And so what we did is we refinanced that property and took the cash out, paid off the debt on the apartment building, and went ahead and gifted the apartment building to the CRT. Their debt level did not change because their loan to value was larger, obviously, on the asset that we put the additional debt on. But their debt level did not change, and neither did their outlay for that debt. But that's how we deal with that issue.
So it can't have debt. It must be a debt-free asset.
That is correct.
Okay.
Once we put it inside the trust, that's absolutely correct.
Okay. Good to know.
You know, this is not typically a strategy that's used while you're accumulating assets. You're accumulating your wealth. It really has to do with taking some chips off the table. You know, I'm too heavy in California real estate. I want to go buy something in another state. But cap rates are still high in that state right now too. But I really would like to take the chips off the table now. What do? This gives you the ability to do that. Now, one thing I want to mention too that I forgot to mention. You can buy real estate inside this trust. So let's walk through that example. Will, your client in Frogtown sells their asset inside this trust and has $1 million to, but they don't want to go buy stocks and bonds. They don't want to go buy gold. They don't want to go buy collectibles. They want to buy real estate. But we know what cap rates are right now. We know what's going on with COVID. We know what's going on with the political environment. Let's just sit on the sidelines. I have no 180-day requirements with the CRT. I can sit inside my CRT in cash for the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It doesn't matter. And 4 years, when Will comes back and says, I've got the best asset for you, it happens to be a fourplex in Frogtown. It may be the exact asset you sold, but the buyer wants to sell it now. And if you can buy that asset back for $600,000, $700,000, so be it. You buy it inside your CRT. You manage the property inside your CRT. And in 10 years, the property's now worth $2 million again. You sell the asset again. Remember, this is a tax-exempt trust. It's not a tax-exempt trust just once. It's a tax-exempt trust for the entire lifetime of its being, which means that you can sell that asset 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and still pay no tax again. And frankly, the more money that's in the trust, so if we have $2 million today, which is our example, on my example, I should say, not Will's, my example, and we go out and double the asset, well, now we've got a $4 million inside the trust. We're taking 7% of $4 million. We're not taking 7% of $2 million anymore. So we just doubled our cash flow because we bought assets that are appreciating inside our CRT. All kosher, all legal, 100%.
Very interesting. So
sorry, I was gonna say, Anthony's sitting there pondering. I'm wondering if he's going to get any.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, and
very much.
I can see how it works for certain situations really well, and others I'm trying to figure out how to make it work. So yeah.
So you can direct where the investment goes, basically, is what you're saying.
So there's something called a prudent investor rule. I cannot tell you that you get to go to Vegas and throw it on black or red, no matter how good of a roulette player you are. But for all intents and purposes, you have the ability to go out and find all different types of investments that would be prudent to invest in. Collectibles, stocks, bonds, oil and gas, debt fund, a real estate debt fund potentially, another apartment building. So the answer is yes, Will.
Cryptocurrency count?
I don't know if that would be, I have not looked into that, to be honest with you, recently, Anthony. Now, if you had a small piece of it in there, I'm sure it's fine. You couldn't take the total $2 million and put it into cryptocurrency.
Okay.
And frankly, I wouldn't recommend you do it anyways.
Yeah.
Candace says, great question, Anthony. So clearly Candace is into.
I mean, my Bitcoin has been going up all year, so it's on top of my mind right now. Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Happy to have you share the contact information. I'm happy to take any calls, any questions that you, your advisors, your family members may have. Happy to be a resource any way I can.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really, really great. I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else listening did. So thank you for sharing all of that. It's been super helpful.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who may be on the call that know me, yes, this is a COVID beard. I was thinking that it was going to be gone in a couple, 3 months, but it'll be gone when we can all get out to safe and in public and be around each other, hugs and kisses. So.
Do you want to put your contact information here in the panelists and attendees?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat, and then we'll make sure we add it to our YouTube as well and Facebook, so people will have that.
Yeah, we just got a question. Can we get your contact info? So definitely.
So well, do that again.
Okay. Very good. We always wrap these things up, obviously, with kind of a want and needs scenario. Like if people have wants and needs, this is a good opportunity to put it out there. So I have clients, I think they're actually on this call. They're investor clients. They're looking for multifamily fixers in the 1 to 2 million range. They're pretty agnostic in terms of area. So if anybody has anything, please let me know. We definitely have folks who are looking. We've been looking at a number of things, both on and off market. So if anybody has an on or off market in that range, please let us know. Trying to think what else. I have a triplex in North Hollywood in the 1.1 range. It's right around a 5 cap. It's off market. So if anybody is interested in that, please let me know. And the major thing we have coming up, and we've kind of talked about this the last 2 times, is we have this 8-unit tenant in common property, tenant TIC, coming up in West Hollywood. It's on Hayworth between Fountain and Santa Monica. They're all 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath townhomes. It's very unique, very old style Hollywood. They will be completely renovated. And it has a huge private courtyard, which is obviously has been very key in terms of, for COVID reasons. A lot of people are looking for outdoor space. They're gorgeous. They're about 1,200 square feet each. They're going to be starting at $725, and we should be going to the market in December. So if anybody is interested in those, please let me know. Anthony, do you have anything coming up that you want to discuss?
No, not right now. I don't.
Does anybody else on the call have any wants or any other needs that they'd like to discuss? Quiet group today. Okay.
Yeah, just as a reminder, everyone, please check out our YouTube page. We have so many other videos on there that if you missed our webinars, they'll be there for you. A lot of great information. And I'm super excited for Will's 8-unit building to come up, the TIC. It's a great price point, really charming building. And I think that, yeah, that's going to be really exciting. And just for you as, investors or realtors who are watching, there's one video we have on how to list a TIC, which is a short 20-minute video, and another one on kind of the general rules of what a TIC is and how all of that works. So check those out because, yeah, they're going to be definitely helpful.
It's definitely an amazing potential exit strategy for people with multifamily investments. If you're looking to get out of the landlord game and want to sell off your units individually, it's a way to do it without going through the condo process, which could take years and may not even happen. So it's a private agreement. It can happen. Ours is going to be the largest TIC in West Hollywood, period. So it's going to, I think, make some waves, and we're really excited to see how it changes the market.
Yeah, I mean, I just did a report and looked at all of the stats from CAR on people who are buying properties and renters and investors who are buying property and what they're using them for. And what we saw that more investors are buying them to flip than they have in the past, but the amount of investors that have bought to rent has gone down a little bit. And we were wondering if that was because of the possibility of Prop 15 and Prop 21 passing, but we also have the state rent control rule passed earlier this year. So, for people who are worried or concerned about that, the TIC option could be huge moving forward. It's just definitely something to look about if you're looking to possibly, instead of just selling your building, convert it into a TIC and find out what the income stream would be that way versus just selling it as is. So we think there's a lot of opportunity there, and we'll be seeing more properties like that.
Agreed.
All right, I think we're done for today, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. And again, Heath, appreciate you for being here. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.